The Wave, פרק, איפה אנחנו? Chapter 9. אם הגעתם עד לפרק 9, כנראה שאתם נהנים משירותיי כאן באינטרנט, אז אני מבקשת, מעודדת, פונה אל הלב סתם, באמת, תעשו סאבסקרייב, אולי גם כדאי ללחוץ על הפעמון הקטן הזה, שמזכיר לכם כל פעם שיש סרטון חדש, ככה שכשעולה הפרק הבא של The Wave תקבלו הודעה ישירות למייל, ואם אתם רוצים להיות חברים טובים, תשלחו את הסרטונים שלי לכל מי שצריך. Chapter 9. Ben Ross wasn't quite sure what to make of the wave. What had begun as a simple history experiment had become a fad that was spreading outside his classroom. As a result, some unexpected things had started to occur. For one, the size of his daily history class was beginning to expand as students from the free periods, study halls, and lunch came to be part of the wave. The recruiting of more students for the wave had apparently been far more successful than he had ever expected. So successful, in fact, that Ben began to suspect that some students were cutting other classes to sit in on his. להפתעתו של חברנו בן רוס, פתאום ילדים מתחילים להגיע לשיעור שלו, אבל מעבר למי שרשום, תראו לכם שאתם יושבים בכאילו שיעור היסטוריה, ויש את הכיתה שלכם בהיסטוריה, פתאום נכנסים עוד ילדים שהם במקרה, לא יודעת, בהפסקה או בשיעור חופשי, ובן מתחיל לחשוב שילדים שיש להם שיעור אחר, הם מבריזים מהשיעור האחר כדי להיכנס לשיעור שלו. כמורה, אין מחמאה יותר מזה. אבל כאילו, אחי, לך לשיעור שלך. זה לא אמור להיות פה. Even with the larger class size and the students' insistence on practicing the salute and motto, the class was not falling behind. If anything, they were covering their assigned lessons even faster than usual. Using the rapid question and answer style that the wave had inspired, they had quickly covered Japan's entrance into the World War II. Ben noticed a marked improvement in preparation for class and in class participation, but he also noticed that there was less thinking behind the preparation. His students could glibly spit back answers as if by rote, but there was no analysis, no questioning their part. In a way, he could not fault them because he himself had introduced them to the way of the wave. It was just another unexpected development in the experiment. עכשיו זה חשוב. עוד משהו שבן רוס שם לב אליו, זה שהילדים ידעו לדקלם את התשובות שלהם מדהים, הם היו סופר מוכנים לשיעור, אבל לא הייתה שום מחשבה ביקורתית מאחורי התשובות, לא הייתה שום אנליזה, שום ניתוח לא היה שם, no analysis. כלומר, הם זרקו עובדות, כמו בשאלון אמריקאי, אוקיי? אבל לא ידעו לחשוב מעבר, לחשוב ביקורתי, לנתח מצבים היסטוריים, וזה דבר שהוא מאוד מאוד חשוב כשלומדים היסטוריה. Ben reasoned that the students realized that to neglect their study would be detrimental to the wave. The only way they could have time to spend on the wave was to be so well prepared that they only needed half the regular class to cover their assigned lessons. But he wasn't certain this was something to be pleased about. The class's homework assignments had improved, but rather than long, thoughtful answers, they wrote short ones. On a multiple choice test, they might all do well, but Ben had his doubts about how they do on an exam consisting of essays. אז שוב, הם היו יכולים להצליח אחלה במבחן אמריקאי, אבל ברגע שהוא ייתן להם שאלות פתוחות, שאלות אסיי, מה שנקרא, לא בטוח כמה הם הצליחו שם. To add to the interesting developments in his experiment, was a report he'd heard that David Collins and his friends Eric and Brian had successfully infused the wave into the school's football team. Over the years, Norm Schiller, the biology teacher, who also coached the school's football team, has become so soured by wisecracks about the team's continual losses that during football season he practically went months without speaking to another teacher. But that morning, in the faculty lounge, Norm had actually thanked him for introducing the wave to his students. Would wonders never cease? פתאום קואוץ' שילר, נורם שילר, המאמן של הפוטבול שהיה גם מורה לביולוגיה, הודע לו על The Wave, כי כאילו The Wave ממש מסדר לו את הקבוצה, אז וואו, בן רוס כאילו נפעם מהסיפור הזה. On his own, Ben had tried to find out what it was that attracted students to the wave. Some of those he asked said it was just something new and different, like any fad. Others said they liked the democracy of it, the fact that they were all equals now. It pleased Ross to hear that answer. He enjoyed thinking that he had helped break down the petty popularity contests and cliques that he felt often preoccupied too much of his students' thinking and energy. A few students even said they thought the idea of increased discipline was good for them. They had surprised Ben. Over the years, discipline had become an increasingly personal responsibility. If the students didn't do it themselves, their teachers were less and less inclined to step in. Maybe this was a mistake, Ben thought. Perhaps one of the results of his experiment would be a general rebirth of school discipline. He even daydreamed about a story in the education section of Time magazine. Discipline returns to the classroom. Teacher makes startling discovery. סקרן את בן רוס לשמוע למה הילדים כל כך אוהבים את The Wave, מה כל כך מלהיב אותם. אז חלק אמרו שזה פשוט מרגש וחדש, כמו כל אופנה חדשה כזו. חלק אמרו שהם אוהבים את הדמוקרטיה שבדבר, שהם מרגישים שווים ושאין יותר קליקות ואין תחרות פופולריות, וזאת תשובה שבן מאוד אהב לשמוע. וחלק אמרו לו שזה בגלל שהם מרגישים שהם היו צריכים את האקסטרה משמעת הזו. ואז הוא חשב לעצמו, וואו, אולי באמת אחד מתוצאות הניסוי שלי יהיה שצריך להחזיר את המשמעת החזקה הזו לכיתה, והוא גם דמיין איך יכתבו עליו כתבה במגזין טיים, שזה המגזין אולי הכי חשוב שיש בעולם, מורה מחזיר את המשמעת לכיתה. אז בסך הכל בשלב הזה של הניסוי, בן רוס מרגיש די טוב עם עצמו, הוא נרגש לראות מה היו התוצאות, הוא גם בודק למה התלמידים כל כך בעניין, בינתיים הכל יחסית בסדר. Laurie Saunders sat on a desk in the Pool Publications office, chewing on the end of a pen. Various members of the Gordon Grapevine staff sat on desks around her, biting their nails or chewing gum. Alex Cooper was wearing his Sony radio and was bopping to the music through his earphones. Another reporter was wearing roller skates. This was the Grapevine's excuse for a weekly editorial meeting. Okay, Laurie told them. We've got the same problem as usual. The paper is due out next week, but we don't have enough stories. Laurie looked at the girl wearing roller skates. Jeannie, you were supposed to do a fashion story on the latest clothes. Where is it? Oh, nobody's wearing anything interesting this year, Jeannie replied. It's always the same thing. Jeans and sneakers and a t-shirt. Well, then write about how there are no new styles this year, Laurie said. Then she turned to the reporter who was bopping to his radio. Alex? Alex kept bopping. He couldn't hear her. Alex! Laurie said more loudly. Finally, someone near Alex gave him a nudge. He looked up, startled. Yeah? Laurie rolled her eyes. Alex, this is supposed to be an editorial meeting. Really? Alex replied. Okay, so where's your record review on this issue? Laurie asked. Yeah, record review. Yeah, Alex said. Well, you see, it's a long story. I was going to do it, but remember that trip I said I had to take to Argentina? Laurie rolled her eyes again. Well, it fell through, Alex said, and I had to go to Hong Kong instead. Laurie turned to Alex's sidekick, Carl. I suppose you had to go to Hong Kong with him, she said sarcastically. Carl shook his head. No, he replied seriously. I made the trip to Argentina as scheduled. I see, said Laurie. She looked around at the rest of the Grapevine staff. I suppose the rest of you have been too busy bopping around the globe to get anything written as well? I went to the movies, Janie said. Did you write a review? Laurie asked. No, it was too good, she replied. Too good? It's no fun writing reviews of good movies, she said. Yeah, said Alex, the globe-hopping record reviewer. It's no fun doing a review on a good movie, because you can't say anything bad about it. The only time it's fun to review something is when it's bad. Then you can tear it to shreds. Alex started rubbing his hands together as he went into his mad scientist routine. Alex had the best mad scientist routine in school. He also did a great imitation of a windsurfer in a hurricane. We need stories for the paper, Laurie said resolutely. Doesn't anyone have any ideas? They got a new school bus, someone said. Whippy! I heard that Mr. Gabandi is going on sabbatical next year. Maybe he won't come back. Some kid in the 10th grade put his fist through a window yesterday. He was trying to prove that you could punch a hole in a window and not cut yourself. Did you do it? Nope, got 12 stitches. Hey, wait a minute, said Carl. What about this wave thing? Everyone wants to know what it is. Aren't you in Ross's history class, Lori? Another staff member asked. That's probably the biggest story in school right now, said a third. Lori nodded. She was aware that the wave was worth a story, and maybe a big story at that. A couple of days ago, it had even occurred to her that something like the wave was probably just what the sluggish, disorganized staff of the Grapevine itself needed. But she had set the idea aside. She couldn't even explain her decision consciously. It was just that creepy feeling she began to get, that feeling that maybe they should be careful with the wave. So far, she'd seen it do some good in Mr. Ross's class, and David said he thought it was helping the football team. But still, she was cautious. אנחנו בפגישה של הגרייפוויין, של העיתון בית ספר, של האדיטוריאל סטאפ שם, של הצוות של העריכה, והם בעצם, לורי הרצינית היחידה שמנסה לאסוף את חבורת השבורים שלה שכתבו לעיתון, כל אחד ממציא איזה תירוץ מפגר אחר, ממציא טיולים לארגנטינה, להונג קונג, אז בקיצר אין עם מי לדבר, אף אחד לא עושה את העבודה שלו, לורי מתוסכלת. ואז פתאום מישהו מציע, היי, מה עם הווייב הזה? בוא נכתוב עליו, כולם מאוד מתעניינים לדעת מה זה, לורי, את לא בזה של הווייב? ולורי חושבת על זה, והיא ידעה שאולי הווייב זה בדיוק מה שיארגן לה את הצוות של העיתון, בדיוק כמו שזה יארגן את הפוטבול, אבל היא כאילו שמה את הרעיון הזה בצד, בצורה די תת-הכרתית כזאת, היא לא יכלה להגיד לעצמה בדיוק למה, אבל פשוט עדיין הייתה בה את התחושה המקריפה הזאת, של משהו קריפי על הווייב, אז היא החליטה להישאר זהירה. Well, what about it, Lori? Someone asked. The wave? Lori said. How come you haven't assigned that story to us? Alex asked. Or are you just saving the good ones for yourself? I don't know if anyone knows enough about it to write about it yet, Lori said. What do you mean? You're in the wave, aren't you? Alex asked. Well, yes, I am, Lori replied, but I still don't know. A couple of the staff members scowled. Well, I think the Grapevine still should have a story reporting that it exists, at least, Carl said. I mean, a lot of kids are wondering what it is. Lori nodded. Okay, you're right. I'll try to explain what it is. But in the meantime, I want you all to do something. Since we still have a few days before the paper has to come out, try to find out everything you can about what kids think of the wave. לורי מסכימה לכתוב קצת על הווייב, והיא שולחת את חבורת הכתבים המושבטת שלה, לברר מה הילדים בבית ספר באמת חושבים על the wave. Ever since the night she had first discussed the wave with her mother and father at dinner, Lori had purposely avoided the subject at home. It didn't seem worth creating any more hassles, especially with her mother, who could find something to worry about in everything Lori did, whether it was going out late with David, chewing on a pen, or the wave. Lori just hoped her mother would forget about it. But that night, while she was studying in her room, her mother knocked on the door. Babe, can I come in? Sure, Mom. The door opened and Mrs. Saunders stepped in, wearing a yellow terry cloth bathrobe and slippers. The skin around her eyes looked greasy, and Lori knew she'd been putting wrinkle cream on. How are the crow's feet, Mom? She asked in good-natured humor. Mrs. Saunders smiled wearily at her daughter. Someday, she said, wagging a finger, someday you won't think it's so funny. She walked over to the desk and peered over her daughter's shoulder at the book she was reading. Shakespeare? What did you expect? Lori asked. Well, anything except the wave, Mrs. Saunders said, sitting down in her daughter's bed. Lori turned to look at her. What do you mean, Mom? Only that I met Elaine Billings at the supermarket today, and she told me Robert is a completely new person. Was she worried? Lori asked. No, she wasn't, but I am, Mrs. Saunders said. You know, they've been having problems with him for years. Elaine talked to me frequently about it. She's been very worried. Lori nodded. So she's ecstatic about this sudden change, Mrs. Saunders said, but somehow I don't trust it. Such a dramatic personality change. It almost sounds like he's joined a cult or something. What do you mean? Laurie, if you study the types of people who join these cults, there are almost always people who are unhappy with themselves and their lives. They look at the cult as a way of changing, of starting over, of literally being born again. How else do you explain the change in Robert? אנחנו בבית של לורי, אמא שלה מדברת איתה, הן מתבטחות קצת על זה, על הקרם עיניים שאמא שלה מרחה שם על הפרצוף שלה, והם התחילו לדבר על The Wave, למרות שלורי לא רצתה להעלות את הנושא, אבל הנושא עלה, והיא מספרת לה שהיא פגשה, אמא שלה מספרת לה שהיא פגשה את אמא של רוברט בילינגס בסופר, והילד השתנה לחלוטין, הוא כאילו, ממש כאילו בן אדם אחר, והם כולם שמחים, אבל לאמא של לורי זה נראה קצת מוזר שבן אדם עושה כזה 180 מעלות פתאום, זה כאילו חריג, וזה יכול לעלות סימני שאלה מטרידים. והיא אומרת ללורי, תקשיבי, זה נשמע כאילו הצטרף לאיזה קאט, ואם את מסתכלת על אנשים שמצטרפים לקאטות, וזה נכון אגב, אנשים שבוחרים להצטרף לקאטות ולדברים כאלה, זה בדרך כלל אנשים שהם באמת במצב לא טוב, שמאוד לא מרוצים מעצמם, מאוד לא מרוצים מהחיים שלהם, ומחפשים מקום להתחיל בו מחדש, לקבל בו כוח. ואז אמא של לורי אומרת, מחפשים מקום שממש להיוולד מחדש. וזה מלחיץ, כי זה בדיוק מה שרוברט בילינגס זוכרים, זה בדיוק מה שרוברט בילינגס אמר בשיעור, שהוא מרגיש ש- he was born again. אז תשימו לב לזה, אמא של לורי מאוד מאוד חדה בקטע הזה. But what's wrong with that, mom? The problem is that it's not real, Lori. Robert is safe only as long as he keeps within the confines of the wave. But what do you think happens when he leaves it? The outside world doesn't know or care about the wave. If Robert couldn't function in school before the wave, he won't be able to function outside school where the wave doesn't exist. Lori understood. Well, you don't have to worry about me, Mom. I don't think I'm as crazy about it as I was a couple of days ago. Mrs. Saunders nodded. No, I didn't think you would be. Once you thought about it for a while. So what's the problem? Lori asked. The problem is everyone else at school who still takes it seriously, her mother said. Oh, Mom, you're the one who's taking this too seriously. Do you want to know what I think? I think it's just a fad. It's like punk rock or something. In 2 months, no one will even remember what the wave was. Mrs. Billings told me that they're organizing a wave rally for Friday afternoon, Mrs. Saunders said. It's just a pep rally for the football game on Saturday, Lori explained. The only difference is they're calling it a wave rally instead of a pep rally, which they will formally indoctrinate 200 new members? Mrs. Saunders asked skeptically. Lori sighed. Mom, listen to me. You're really getting paranoid about this whole thing. Nobody's indoctrinating anyone. They're going to welcome new members to the wave at the rally. Those people would have come to the pep rally anyway. Really, Mom, the wave is just a game. It's like little boys playing soldier. I wish you could meet Mr. Ross because you'd see there's nothing to worry about. He's such a good teacher. He'd never get into anything like cults. And you're not disturbed by it at all? Mr. Saunders asked. Mom, the only thing that disturbs me is that so many kids in my class would allow themselves to get caught up in something so immature. I mean, I guess I can understand why David is into it. He's convinced that it's going to turn the football team into a winner. But it's Amy I can't understand. I mean, well, you know Amy. She's so bright, and yet I see her taking this so seriously. So you are worried, her mother said. But Lori shook her head. No, Mom, that's the only thing that bothers me. And that isn't much. I promise you, Mom, this is a molehill and you're looking for a mountain. Really, trust me. Mrs. Saunders rose slowly. Well, all right, Lori. At least I know you're not involved in this situation. I suppose that's enough to be thankful for. But please, babe, be careful. She leaned over, kissed her daughter on the forehead, and left the room. For a few minutes, Lori sat at her desk, but did not go back to her homework. Instead, she chewed on a Big Pen and thought about her mother's concerns. She really was blowing it way out of proportion, wasn't she? It really was just a fad, wasn't it? בסוף פרק 9 אנחנו מגלים דרך אמא של לורי שמארגנים מין כזה ראלי. ראלי זה בארצות הברית, עושים אספה כזו בבית ספר, בדרך כלל לפני משחקים חשובים של נגיד פוטבול או משהו כזה, אבל לא בהכרח. והמטרה זה לעורר כאילו רוח בית ספר, סקול ספיריט, ובאמת ליצור כזה מורל ועניינים. וזה קורה בכל מקרה, זה נקרא פאפ ראלי, וזה קורה בכל מקרה, כשפתאום הם הולכים לקרוא לראלי הקרוב, הולכים לקרוא לזה wave rally, והם הולכים לקבל 200 מצטרפים חדשים, הם השתמשו במילה indoctrinate. אם אנחנו מתרגמים את המילה indoctrinate לעברית, לפי המילון, זה לימד, הטיף, הנחיל או הקנה. כלומר, זה מגיע עם איזשהו קונטקסט דתי מטיף כזה, אוקיי? אז הם השתמשו במילה to indoctrinate 200 new members, אבל אמרה לה לורי שלא, זה לא indoctrinate, זה סתם to welcome new members. וטוב, והיא מנסה להרגיע את אמא שלה, עזבי אמא, זה סתם שטויות, אני רק לא מבינה למה אמי so immature about this, ולמה זה מעניין אותה, דיוויד אני מבינה בגלל הפוטבול, בסדר, אבל אמי שהיא חכמה. ואמא שלה אומרת, טוב טוב טוב, היא יוצאת מהחדר, ולורי נשארת ככה עם המחשבות שלה על מה שאמא שלה אמרה. והיא אומרת לעצמה, טוב, זה סתם, זה כאילו יחלוף, נכון? כאילו זה סתם, זה שטות, נכון? וזה באמת פרק 9 נשאר עם סימני שאלה, לורי מתחילה לשאול שאלות. אני מנסה להעלות את הפרקים צפופים אחד לשני, לא תמיד עובד לי. את פרק 10 אני מקליטה ממש עכשיו, אז הסיכויים שלכם גבוהים שתראו אותו מיד אחרי הפרק הזה. אז לפני שאתם לוחצים על הפרק הבא, אתם לוחצים על הסאבסקרייב, אפשר גם להשאיר לי תגובה, אני קוראת את כולם, מבטיחה, אני גם לפעמים מסמנת כזה לב ותאמס אפ. ואם בא לכם לתמוך בי בעוד דרכים, אפשר לעקוב אחריי גם באינסטגרם וגם בטיק טוק. ויאללה, נתראה בפרק הבא. ביי!